welcome to this special interview. I am ARCHANA SHUKLA and with me is VIKAS DANDEKAR. And today we are in conversation with Vas Narasimhan, Global Head of Drug Development for Novartis and also the Chief Medical Officer at the big firm. Thank you so much, Vas, for speaking with CNBC TV 18. You're being here in India at this point in time, talking to companies here, talking to your drug development team means a lot. Is India stepping up on the charts when we talk of R&D for Novartis? What more are you looking to get out of India?
No, first of all, thanks a lot for the interview opportunity. You know, Novartis has had a long presence here in India. I mean, we've been here for almost 15 years. And what we've learned is that there's a tremendous talent base here that we can use for all of our development programs around the world. So now we've created really one of our 3 global development centers here in India. So my visit this time, along with my leadership team, was to really showcase the site, showcase all of the work we're doing here, and continue to look at how we can further expand our operations. I mean, we are always looking to get the best people into our organization. And given the size of our drug development portfolio, we're going to keep expanding. So we're very excited, very good discussions with the government. I think the government is very supportive of our presence here. So we're looking forward to a strong relationship with the country.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the drug development work that you do out of India, how much of that is expanding in terms of people, in terms of investments? You are doing more beyond just clinical management or data management out of India. So where are we headed from here on?
And so we're very unique in the industry. We've built an integrated development operation. Total here we have about 3,500 people in this center between our service center as well as our development operations. And our goal is to continue to move up in terms of the complexity of work we can do here. Can we do more in terms of our technical development work? Can we do even more in terms of our trial management work? We're even now starting to design clinical studies here in India. So we want to continue to expand the capability. It's very unique in the industry. No one else has built an integrated development operation in India.
Right. So, in terms of, I know, if I ask you from the percentage terms, it would be quite a small percentage that India would be contributing from the R&D space for Novartis, but in terms of specific work that you're doing here, if you could highlight some for our audiences.
Yeah, so the specific work we do here, and this is one of our 3 global centers, so it's not that insignificant, in fact, it's actually quite significant. So the teams here manage all of our safety cases around the world we continuously monitor our drugs for safety. That monitoring happens here. A lot of the analytical work we do on the drugs that we're developing is all done also here in Hyderabad. All of the data management of all of our clinical trials are done here, as well as a lot of the trial management is also done here in India. So these are very complex roles, but we've been impressed by the talent and we've been able to build that talent over time.
So just to follow up on the previous question that Archana asked on the India opportunities, I believe a lot of work for Cosentyx and ENTRESTO also happened here. So, and you also had a MOU with the Telangana government on an incubation program. Some more, color on exactly where all of this is expanding. Do you think at some point of time you may have a goal to set up some kind of a drug discovery operations in this country?
What we find in India is there's tremendous talent in terms of technical development work in chemistry and formulation, as well as great scientists who can work on our clinical trials, as well as tremendous expertise in data management, statistics, etc. I think on the so we will continue to expand in those areas. As I said, this is a priority and we continue to expand this operation in an integrated way. When you look at the discovery side, I think India still has some ways to go. I think the Indian government, and particularly Telangana, is doing the right thing by building up clusters of companies with the right infrastructure. But we still don't see yet, the kind of basic discovery capability that, that we would need to see to really invest significantly. What we are doing is using partnerships with universities, partnerships with local companies, where appropriate, to try to look for discovery opportunities.
I just wanted to bring in a question on the biosimilar space here when we are talking of Novartis. With the bigger Amgens of the world, competing, how is Novartis looking at the overall biosimilars portfolio that you have in terms of development, in terms of marketing globally?
You know, we're the world leader in biosimilars. We have about $1 billion in sales in biosimilars in 2016, and we've built a very large portfolio of biosimilars to date. We continue to believe this is going to be a very attractive space, though it is getting much more competitive. Certainly the local Indian players now are much more active as well in biosimilars. Over time, I think this will be about who can execute very well, be one of the first few biosimilars to market, and then who can maintain very high quality, because I think that's going to be very important as global regulators continue to look at the biosimilars market.
We see some of those biosimilars coming to India. We haven't heard, in terms of Novartis' presence in biosimilar or your plans to bring some of them to India.
Yeah, so in India right now, we're assessing how best to bring them. Of course, local players here are also bringing forward biosimilars as well. So I think as the market dynamics evolve, we'll of course look to bring those here as well. I mean, I think we also, of course, are bringing our novel biologics more and more to India. We've created emerging market brands that allow us to bring our novel biologics, like our drugs for psoriasis, as well as others to the Indian market.
Any timelines?
That already has happened. So we've already launched our drug.
No, in terms of biosimilars, I wanted to ask.
Oh, in terms of biosimilars, I think it'd be too soon for us to say. So.
All right. Just one more question before we move on to the deeper R&D specific and the innovation specific questions was, there was recently a court order on Copaxone Latifah, where you've kind of taken a lead, but approvals have yet not come in.
Yeah.
With your partner, what would be the assessment of the market right now for the 40 mg Latifah market in the US?
You know, so we were the first company to launch a 20 milligram biosimilar of Copaxone with Latifah, and that's been a very successful launch. You know, we're working very closely with the FDA to bring this forward. I mean, we don't have any specific timelines as we await the agency's decision. We're very happy to see the court ruling that allows us now to move forward from an IP perspective. And of course, we'll keep the markets up to date as we learn more from a regulatory standpoint.
But would you be assessing a possibility of an at-risk launch if the approvals come in?
So always we assess, the pros and cons, but we usually, don't disclose ahead of time our strategies on these things.
All right. Just, I wanted to understand from the experience that you have had with the 20 mg one that you've launched in the US market, how has the experience been, and how quickly or how soon do you think the markets could move to 40?
So, the payer environment is such in the U.S. that there's very rapid adoption, once we are able to launch either a biosimilar, as we've seen with filgrastim, our launch first biosimilar launch in the U.S., as well as with Latifah. So we would expect with 40 milligrams, I think, a similar dynamic, once we do launch.
Right. On to your, favorite subject of R&D, drawing a lot from your JP Morgan conference presentation. We are at the cusp of a transformation right now. I mean, we've talked about CRISPR, we've talked about checkpoint inhibitors. Immuno-oncology is drawing a lot of crowd. CAR-T, you didn't have a great start, but you're still on your commitment. Just a color on exactly where is this landscape heading, and where does Novartis stand in all of this?
On CAR-T, we're the leader, we believe, in CAR-T. We're well on our way with a planned filing pediatric ALL. We'll then go into diffuse large B-cell lymphoma later this year. And that is immunotherapy. That is immuno-oncology. People often forget. And that's an area where we've really built, world-class leadership. So that's our first pillar in terms of our immuno-oncology strategy. What we're focused on right now is combinations. Can we combine second-generation immuno-oncology agents with a PD-1? And then can we use our very sizable targeted therapy portfolio and also combine with PD-1 or another immuno-oncology agent? Our real focus now is to really win in that second wave of innovation. I think it's important to note that to date we only have 2 immuno-oncology therapies approved. And in many cancers, the effect is not so significant. There's still a lot more we can do. So I think later this year we'll start to get readouts on that portfolio, and then we'll be able to take things forward.
Right. So beyond the launches of Merck and BMS, Roche has also taken a fair bit of lead right now in the short time that we have seen. Where is Novartis in the PD-1, PD-L1 race?
Yeah, so we've started development of our own anti-PD-1, and so we now have 5 trials posted on clinicaltrials.gov, and we're moving forward with combination studies as well. We really view that as a platform to then, with our 15 second generation IO related agents, to then do combination studies. So I think the game is still very wide open. I mean, I think the second generation immuno-oncology will learn a lot in the next year, and then we can shape the portfolio accordingly. So
the space for where Cosentyx is right now, we've seen TARS, we've seen another product, and then we've seen Sun Pharma's tirurakizumab also making good progress in phase 3. Do you think this is a great opportunity? Because Cosentyx, I saw the graph, it's really done very well. So where is it all headed?
So Cosentyx has done extremely well. As you saw in our earnings, we've crossed $1 billion. It's been a very successful launch, and so we're very pleased with how that's performing. As you also heard in the earnings call, versus Taltz, we think we have important differentiation. We're of course approved in rheumatology and psoriatic arthritis and ankylosing spondylitis. We have 4-year data and 3-year data in all of these indications, so very long track record of safety and efficacy. So I think we feel very good about where Cosentyx is heading. Now, when you look at the IL-23 subunit P19, sorry, it's a complicated word, but that's what tirurakizumab is from Sun. We still haven't seen the final phase 3 readouts with all of the safety and other efficacy. So it's still too soon to judge. We believe that Cosentyx sets a very high bar for efficacy, and I think we feel very confident with the profile, particularly in rheumatology, where in the long run we're alone in many of these rheumatology indications.
So the graph showed that you really had a massive steep curve as compared to Stelara and TARS. Do you think that will remain that way, or do you think it will even out?
So we feel very confident in the trajectory right now of Cosentyx. I mean, I think, as we said, cleared $1 billion, continue to grow very nicely. We think there'd be 2 real catalysts: continued expansion in psoriasis. But as I said earlier, I mean, our profile in rheumatology is very unique. I mean, we have a drug here that patients who you monitor with X-ray, we can actually show that we stop the progression or slow the progression of the disease in over 80% of patients. And that's not something that other medicines approved to date has shown. So we're seeing tremendous uptake in rheumatology in particular. I mean, in some markets, we're already the #1 rheumatology agent ahead of anti-TNFs, which of course have been around for a very long period of time. So for us, within a year, to be the #1 product in that category, shows I think the power of this medicine.
Could you also update us on where your project with Google stands? Because the clinical trials did not go according to the stipulated timelines. Any update on that?
So our alliance with Google, Verily, on the Google Lens, it's a complicated challenge technologically to create a contact lens with digital technology embedded in it that can then accommodate to near and far vision, and then also have all of the other sensors. So I think it's very normal in this kind of very disruptive, revolutionary project to have timelines move around, but we remain committed to the partnership. We remain committed to the moving forward in the clinical trials. I think you'll see progress in the year to come.
When we are talking of R&D, a lot has been spoken in the recent times about pricing of drugs and how you connect it to the R&D costs that you incur while developing that drug. There's also a lot of conversation post-President Trump's comments on drug pricing. How would you comment on that, and how does Novartis look at pricing of drugs?
I think one of the important things on pricing that we really need to do is get the facts on the table. When you look at drug pricing in the United States, it accounts for around 15% of the total cost of healthcare. In other countries, it's actually even less than that. We need to make healthcare overall more efficient, and that other 85%, there's many procedures, a lot of things that are done which don't actually make sense from a cost-effectiveness standpoint. So one, we have to get the facts on the table, and also to understand better who gets the value. In the United States, there are other groups that also extract value from a drug price. Usually a pharmaceutical company gets less than half of the actual price that you see for the drug. I think the other element we have to really consider is outcomes and the impact that we have. So at Novartis, we really believe over time there'll be more and more interest in outcomes-based pricing, value-based pricing. So we have 4 pilots ongoing. We're learning a lot about outcomes-based pricing. I think over time we feel confident that we can demonstrate that our drugs create the value for the healthcare system, and then allow us to then be paid for the impact that we have. I think with regard to the president, I mean, it's too soon to really judge. I think until we see really clear policy proposals, we just take more of a wait-and-see attitude. We believe that innovation does get rewarded. When you have breakthrough innovation against major medical problems, innovation will get rewarded. That's the strategy our company has had for decades, and that's a strategy we'll continue to pursue.
Right. We keep having this conversation, whether it is with Indian drug makers or who are into R&D or with the global ones, about the cost of developing a drug. And 2 years ago, I had attended one of the sessions in Basel with Novartis, where someone mentioned that it takes about $4 billion to bring up a drug, to eventually bring that drug, develop it and bring it to the market. And essentially that is the reason why the costs of drugs keep going up. But now $4 billion, I presume, is quite a steep number to put to, because otherwise we keep hearing $2.5 billion from others. So just to understand on how you look at the pricing or the cost of development.
You know, the cost of developing a drug, these numbers you often see are averages that are calculated in many different ways. And often what they're trying to account for is all of the failures that happen in drug development. So, you know, I think the reality is there's a lot of variability. I mean, you could have drugs that are developed for, $500 million to $1 billion. You can have others that have large outcome studies that can cost, $2 to $3 billion. So you have everything in between. I think what we need to focus on is getting the cost of development down. And we see a few ways to do that. One, we want to keep reducing the cost of our operations. So actually Hyderabad plays a tremendous role in that. We're continuously investing in our technology, our systems, digital technologies to bring down the cost of actually doing the work of drug development. We're also looking at using digital sensors and other technologies so that we can capture data better from patients and then actually make our trials smaller, because we're able to capture better data that allows us then to hit the endpoint much more quickly. And then I think we also have to be smarter about our decisions, right? We have to kill projects early that are not looking to be successful, and really focus our resources. Because the longer you have a project go into later phases of development and then you kill the project later or stop the project later, the costs, of course, are much higher. So all of those things play in. I mean, I would expect the industry now to really focus on lowering drug development costs. And Novartis, we want to be the leader in this. I mean, we're investing in technology, we're investing in sensors, we're doing all of the things I mentioned to really drive down the development costs.
But you agree that for companies like yours will increasingly face the risk of pricing impacting your numbers?
So, I mean, there's no question, of course, pricing will play a role, but I think when you look over time, this industry has always been able to create breakthrough innovations, and Novartis as a company has consistently brought those breakthrough innovations forward. So we view the environment will evolve, but our core has to be to get really powerful innovations, capture the outcomes, and demonstrate the benefit, and then we believe society will reimburse us for that.
All right.
Right. Okay. So on the 4 pilots that you mentioned on value-based pricing or pay for performance, how is it going? And if you can explain it to us in a little detail, if that can be scaled up in the future.
Yes, so it's very early days. I mean, the concept here is we contract based on the outcomes, particularly for ENTRESTO, where we know the medicine has an impact on mortality as well as heart failure hospitalizations. And we want to show that we can reduce the hospitalizations, which is an important factor for healthcare costs. Now, one of the challenges is having data systems to capture that. I mean, I think that probably is one of the key challenges in actually moving to real-world evidence and outcomes. Can you capture the data? The second is, can you analyze the data? Because, in our clinical trials, we control a lot of variables. When you go into the real world, there's lots of other factors, and you need to control for that. So a lot of the discussion is about those issues when we talk to the other parties. Nonetheless, I mean, we started them out. I mean, we would expect it would take a few years, right, before we will really know whether or not the plan has worked, per our agreements. But we feel confident that given what we've seen, I mean, remember that Paradigm HF, the study that was used to license ENTRESTO, was one of the largest heart failure trials ever conducted. You saw over 20% heart failure hospitalization reductions, 20% mortality reductions. So given that, we would expect to replicate that in the real world.
But still the pickup for the product has been a little slower than expected.
I think when you look at ENTRESTO, all of the pieces are in place. I mean, you have a situation where you have a drug that had the mortality and hospitalization benefit I mentioned. It's been shown to be cost effective. It is first line in the guidelines in the United States and second line in Europe. So all of the factors are in place for this drug to be incredibly successful. It's taken longer than we had originally expected to get access through the payer environment. And I think that's more of a reflection on the U.S. payer environment becoming much more challenging. I mean, payers are putting up more hurdles for new innovations to be adopted, which we have to work through. But now, if you look at our earnings call, we discussed how we have much better access in terms of formulary, in terms of co-pays. So we expect now to see the trajectory improve.
Right.
If I can just take one question, taking from the pilots that you spoke about on outcome-based pricing, how sooner do you think markets like India could see, some sort of a pricing environment like that?
Yeah, I think outcomes-based pricing here is probably some ways away. I mean, I think probably in certain hospital systems, there may be solid enough data to do something like this, but I think you'd also have to have relatively high utilization as well. So you would need both elements to really go to an outcomes-based model. We don't see that high utilization yet of these novel medicines like Entresto, and we don't have the data systems then to monitor. So I think what I would say with India, it'd be interesting to find a healthcare system where we might be able to do some learning, right, to experiment if there was a system that was willing to work with us. That would be certainly an option.
Two important issues that came up at the World Economic Forum on the health side was like one, a coalition was formed under the name of CEPI, and then there was another opportunity on so CEPI was one, and there was a program on antimicrobial resistance. So just your thoughts on the two. I mean, I think the one on AMRs is actually reaching an epidemic proportion, and global companies must come together.
Yeah, so these are two issues that I'm very passionate about. I work on commissions that actually are focused on this, and my background is actually as a vaccine developer. So I think CEPI is a great initiative because what we learned through multiple pandemics, the H1N1 pandemic in 2009, but even the H5N1 earlier, Zika, Ebola, MERS, is that the world is unprepared for these epidemics. And one of the key learnings is that it takes too long if you wait for the epidemic to then develop the medicine and then scale up production. Then you miss the epidemic because it comes too fast. So I think the concept behind CEPI, where you get products into mid-stage development, you have a fund then to rapidly scale up development, is a great start. Probably not enough. We probably need to do even more, particularly on the manufacturing side. I had the experience of running the H1N1 response for Novartis in 2009. We were one of the largest suppliers to the U.S. government. And what we really learned is production capacity and being able to scale up production capacity for a vaccine is critically important, because when the whole world wants a vaccine, you need to be able to scale up capacity very quickly. So I think CEPI is going in the right direction, but there's going to need more to happen. I think on antimicrobial resistance, we're clearly heading towards a crisis, but we do have to face the reality that we have a sort of a market failure here, because the reward for developing an antimicrobial is not significant enough for the investment involved. Now, Novartis, we're quite committed to this space, so we have an entire center in California focused on novel antimicrobials, novel antivirals. We're going to find ways to work with with governments, foundations to develop these medicines. But I think one of the things we do need to tackle is the fact there's not a strong market incentive to develop third or fourth line agents, because typically then they're used in a much more limited way.
Right.
Yeah. Just as we wrap up this interview, just wanted to end it on asking you about what's happening at Alcon, as in, have you finally made up your mind, and what's the latest on that? We keep hearing a lot in the market, but is there really a plan to hive and sell it off?
So as you heard in our earnings call, our plan right now is to do an assessment. We've certainly opened up the possibility for a spin-off or an IPO, but at this point we haven't made any final decisions. So I think we're going to continue to work on turning the business. What our real focus has to be to get Alcon to grow, and that will be the focus for this year. And then you'll hear from Joe, I think, over the course of the year, updates on our ultimate plans for Alcon.
All right, Vas Narasimhan, it was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for sparing time for CNBC TV 18, and many good wishes for all the endeavors at Novartis.
Thank you very much. Thank you both.